So as you can see, the first part is super easy. It's telling you to use the square root property. In other words, apply a square root to be able to solve your equation. So you don't even have to complete the square because these guys already have perfect square quadratic trinomials, right? So on number one, you would think what times what is that C value that if you combine together is the B value. So you have your x, and that would be a -4 and a -4. So you're going to be able to write that as x minus 4 squared equals 1. And then you're going to apply the square root. So you will have x minus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 1, which is really plus or minus 1. So for your final step, you're going to add 4, and you're going to add 4. So you're going to have to rewrite it and think of both situations, 4 plus 1, 4 minus 1. So let me rewrite it. So right here we have x equals 4 plus or minus 1. That means 4 plus 1 and 4 minus 1. So 4 plus 1 is 5, that's an answer. 4 minus 1 is 3, that's an answer. So those are your answers for number 1. All these first section equations, numbers 1 through 7, are that easy. Why? Because they're all already perfect square quadratic trinomials. You don't have to find that new C value. You don't have to actually complete the square because it's already completed for you. This is a perfect square quadratic trinomial. That's a perfect square quadratic trinomial. This is a perfect square quadratic trinomial. So every single one of these will be able to be rewritten as a binomial squared, and you could just jump to doing the square root. Like for example, right here, the quicker way of doing it, because you know that they're already all perfect square quadratic trinomials, all you have to do is look at the B value and what belongs right here. Anybody? If this is -2, what belongs right here? -1, that's right. Simply half of B is the value that's inside the parentheses of the binomial squared. So you just take half of B, right? I mean, the whole thought process, what we did on number 1 was, okay, go ahead and do the parentheses, put the equals 5, you have an x, you have an x, and that's a -1 and a -1. But you see, that takes some time. If you already know it's a perfect square trinomial, which we do, all of these are perfect square trinomials, you could jump to the parentheses squared situation, write down your x, and then take half of B, bless you, and you have the -1 right there, and then you just jump to solving it by applying some square roots. So you're going to end up with x minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. And of course, add 1 to both sides. You're going to have to rewrite your answer. X equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 5. Now I know some of us think, oh, that's an ugly answer. Whoa. But those ugly answers actually work out nicer because you don't have to do any more math. The 1 plus or minus square root of 5, you can't do it, so you're done. That's your answer. Let's move on to the second part of this homework assignment. The second part is probably the easiest. All they want you to do is to find that perfect C value that we were doing yesterday. And of course, how do you find that perfect C value? Anybody? What do we do with this? Half of it and then multiply it with itself or square it, right? So half of B squared. Okay, half of B squared. So my perfect C value, the C value should be what? 25. So maybe that's my perfect C value. So it says find the value of C. Okay, C equals 25. That makes each trinomial a perfect square. Okay? And I like to, instead of saying perfect square, I like to say a binomial squared. So instead of perfect, I like saying binomial squared, right? It's the same thing though, same difference. So if I did, well, we already did find the perfect C value, 25. So what will my binomial squared be? Anybody? X what? Plus 5. There you go. X plus 5 squared. That's it. So number 9, 10, all these from 9 through 14, it's really that easy. You just take half of b and then square it. The only one I think you might have a problem with, and I'll be honest with you, anytime your b value is odd, then it gets a little more challenging. All right, let's do number 12 right here. If I do half of b and then square it, see, here are the notes. You get b, you take half of it, and then you have to square it. That's how I get this perfect c value. So if I want to actually use this b over 2 squared, it's really going to be b, which is 5, so it's going to be 5 over 2 squared. And you have to think about what this 5 over 2 squared really is. It's really a 5 halves times 5 halves, which is really 25 fourths. Okay? So your perfect c value is 25 fourths. So if you wanted to write number 12 as a perfect square quadratic trinomial, you're going to write it as x squared plus 5x plus 25 fourths. That looks like a 26. Let me change that. 25 fourths. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, is a perfect square quadratic trinomial. Yeah, it gets ugly when your b value is odd, because when you take half of it, you end up with a fraction, and then you have to square that fraction. But that's still a perfect square quadratic trinomial. So this is one answer. The c value is 25 over 4. Now the other answer is they want you to write it as a binomial squared. And we know that there's an x in here, and what value belongs inside the parenthesis? What number belongs right here with the x, ladies and gentlemen? 5 over 2. Positive or negative? Positive, right? So yeah, positive 5 over 2. So it's really not that bad. So those are your two answers. If you flip your paper over, you'll see that they give you both the c and the binomial squared. That's what they're asking for on these questions. So we've done a couple of the first section, done a couple of the second. Let's jump to the third section, where it actually says solve each equation by completing the square. So again, if your b value is odd, it might be a little bit more difficult. However, don't just jump into moving this guy over to this side. First ask yourself, is this a perfect square quadratic trinomial already? Is there a perfect square term here? Yes. Is there a perfect square term here? Yes. So maybe it's already done for you. Is it? Actually, no, it's not. So what do we need to do? It's always important to check first, but what do we do next? So I hoped that we'd be able to think what times what is 36 at it. If you add together is negative 13. So let me subtract 36 over. Let's complete the square. We're going to have x squared minus 13x blank spot equals negative 36 with a blank spot. You put blank spots on both sides to help you remember that what you do to one side, you do to the other. Now this does get a little ugly. Once again, the c value is going to come from, here are the notes that we need to have, that we need to know. C is really b divided by 2 squared. So we need to take the b value, which happens to be 13, divide it by 2, and then square it. This is going to be really ugly. Man, I might have to stop this recording if it doesn't work out that great. So when I square 13 over 2, that 13 over 2 times 13 over 2, that's going to be 169 over 4, right? Yes? Anybody? So we're going to have plus 169 over 4, and you're going to add 169 over 4 over here also. So now we do have a perfect square quadratic trinomial on this side, and we will be able to rewrite it as a binomial squared equaling negative 36 plus 169 over 4. This is ugly. So inside the parenthesis, we have an x, and what belongs inside here? This binomial squared belongs in here with the x. Simply half of b, right? And what's half of b? It's negative 13 over 2, or minus 13 over 2. So I'm going to put minus 13 over 2, because b is negative 13, so minus 13 over 2, half of b. Now on the other side, if I take a look at this number plus this fraction, I could think of it as negative 36 over 1, and I want to add that fraction, negative 36 over 1 plus 169 over 4, which means I need a common denominator. So I need to convert that 1 to become a 4, and I would have to multiply both top and bottom by 4, and if I multiply 4 times negative 36, what do we get? Somebody help me out with the calculator. 4 times negative 36?
Negative 144.
Negative 144. Okay. And then we have the plus 169 over 4, which means that now we're able to actually combine the numerators. So negative 144 plus 169, what do we get? $25, correct? So you get a positive 25 over 4. You guys with me? Bring down the equal sign. You have an x minus 13 over 2 squared. So this is our new equation. We will have to square root and square root. So you will have x minus 13 over 2 equals, and we're going to split the square root since they're both perfect square numbers. Why did I put 24? Should be a 25. Over the square root of 4. So you really have, yes. Thank you, I forgot the plus or minus sign. So we put a plus or minus right in front of that answer. And continuing on, we're going to have x minus 13 over 2 equals plus or minus 5 over 2. So for a final step, we're going to add 13 over 2 to both sides, plus 13 over 2. So I'm going to have to rewrite this whole thing over here on the side. So I'm going to have x equals 13 over 2 plus or minus 5 over 2. So you do have a common denominator right there. So you're going to have both situations, the 13 plus 5, both over 2, and 13 over 2 minus 5 over 2. So you get two answers. That top answer will be 18 over 2. 18 over 2 is really 9. And the bottom answer is going to be 8 over 2. And 8 over 2 is really just 4. So you get those answers. Could somebody do me a favor, flip the paper over and check the answer on the back? 9 and 4. You guys got it? Okay, now let's take one moment and let's go back to the original. You guys are going to hate this. We could have done it right from the beginning. Now, I guess because the instructions say solve by completing the square, that's what we did. But what we could have done right from the beginning is factored it not as a perfect square binomial that we could square root, but we could actually just think what times what is 36, that if you add together is negative 13. That would be a negative 9 times a negative 4, right? And we could split them and have x minus 9 equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0. So your answers would be 9 and 4. Yay? I know, you're probably thinking then, why the heck did you explain all this? Who knows, maybe you're bored on a Saturday night. So I hope this helps.